me today. You know that this is question time, and so you are giving me questions, and I answer them every Sunday as best I can. I do a lot of research. And here's a question for me, that maybe I need to do research into this one. Why do I forget things? Can anybody answer that? Someone handed me this slip right before the service began. Right in front of my nose it was. And I didn't say what was on the slip, so I'm going to say it now. That this is Lou's friend Joey, who is nearing his transition. And we need to hold this Lou and her friend in our prayers, in our love, in our life. And we can do that. So that makes me feel a whole lot better. Thank you. So yes, this is question time. And I have a question that comes from somebody. I have no idea because you don't have to sign your name to these. So here's what the question is. Do we ever know what our purpose is in this lifetime? Some people seem to have a very clear and strong driven purpose. My life seems to be quite vanilla in purpose. Don't you love that? It seems to be quite vanilla in purpose. How do I know my purpose? Well, that word vanilla makes me think that yesterday I was reading a silly magazine. And in this magazine, it talked about Granny in one of the Beverly Hillbillies episodes, where she put vanilla extract behind her ears so she could smell good when she went out on a date. So I seem to think that vanilla extract, vanilla, that flavor, is wonderful. I like it, don't you? But I think what this person is saying, she's comparing, excuse me, she is comparing her flavor of life, this vanilla flavor, to maybe others who have a very strong flavor in life. Very spicy maybe. It's a strong driven something. Their purpose in life. So I began to think about the word purpose. And I know Wayne Dyer talks about purpose, so I thought I'd see what he said about it. And then I remembered, oh yes, purpose. Purpose is so different from what we do. But we're really combining those, because what this question is, and I think many of us have asked this in our life, what am I supposed to be doing with my life? But that's not the same as our purpose. So he says, what are you supposed to be doing with your life? Well, you came into this life with nothing. You're going to leave with nothing. And so all you really can do with your life is give it away. And give it away in service to others, because you will not find any greater satisfaction than that. But, oh, thank you. I didn't even have to ask, did I? Oh, it's good too. So he says then that purpose is something totally different. It isn't what we do. You see, what we do, that's about all our doingness. Have you ever wondered why we are called a human being and not a human doing? Because doing is just one thing. It's all the many things that we do. But being, you see, our purpose is about beingness. How we be when we do. Does that make any sense to you? How we be, what is our attitude? Jesus gave us the be attitudes about how we are supposed to be in this life when we are doing all these wonderful things. So then we can say that it's a little like happiness, this idea of purpose. That we know that there's no way to happiness, but happiness is the way. And so with purpose, you're not going to go out and find purpose. But purpose is what you bring to all the things you do. So can you see the difference there? Yes, I'm sure you can. And so all these wonderful things that we do, we're going to have a purpose then behind or above or over all of that. And that purpose is that we are to live with love. But not only that, we are to live in love, from love, and we are to be love in everything that we do. That is our purpose. So our purpose in this life is to be the best we can be, and the best we can be is to live from love. There isn't really any other way to live. But I don't think I'm answering this person's question. Because the person, I believe, is probably asking, well, what am I supposed to be doing? Well, I have one suggestion for you. I probably could have many, but that would take me a long time. So one brief suggestion. What should you be doing? Go back to your childhood. What was it that you dreamed about when you were a child? What was that inquisitiveness that came with you? That you maybe took a seed apart to see if maybe there really was a tree in there. I don't know, did any of you do that? Did any of you question life? I certainly did. I used to sit under a rose bush, of all things. It just seemed this bush was so big, and it had this beautiful hollow space underneath it where I could sit and nobody knew I was there. Well, I had something else that I did, and nobody knew that I was there either. I would go out in the back of the school, big school that I went to, and I would sit underneath these huge trees. There wasn't a soul that knew I was there, but I was there to pretend. And I would lay out sticks on the grass, and those sticks would be perhaps my house, and I would cook for people. You see, in all my pretending, there had to be people. That's what I realize now. And so the people would be there, and oh, they loved my cooking. They loved everything about my house, how it was decorated, and they would clap, and they would tell me how wonderful it all was. And then sometimes the sticks would be made bigger, and it would be like an auditorium. And I would be standing there, and I would be speaking to people, and they would applaud. Oh, isn't she wonderful? Do you think that has anything to do with what I'm doing now? Oh, thank you. I didn't expect that. But that's what I'm saying to you. If you want to know what you should be doing in life, what did you pretend you were doing as a child? That's just one suggestion. But overall, your purpose in life is to do whatever you do with love. Love that comes from your source within, pure love. That's what you give to this world. The next question is not really a question, it's a comment. This is the comment that somebody has made. The difference between the Christ and Jesus took me a long time to learn, and many didn't know it. And I would add to that, and many still don't know it. You see, this is an understanding, a basic understanding that we all need to have in our spiritual life. Because the whole gospel message revolves around this difference. The difference between Jesus and the Christ. This is the crux of the matter. So how then would we describe Jesus? I went to Eric Butterworth for that, one of our famous Unity authors. And he says that Jesus was a man on the quest He was a man discovering his own divinity. He was a man that broke through that psychological barrier between humans and God. He told us that we were one. In so many of his messages that he gave to us, it was all about oneness. There is no separation. S-I-N. What's my new definition of that? Of sin? Separate in nature. That's our sin. No, we're not separate in nature. And I think Jesus told us this over and over and over again. And then he was a man that was also claiming for us our divinity and our ability and potential to overcome. And what was the power that allowed him to do all of this? And more, really. It was the Christ within him. It was the Christ that he called the Father. It was the Christ, and he called it the I Am. He called it the inner light. He probably called it many different names, and we call this many different names too. But that is the Christ Spirit that lives in every single one of us. And as Jesus said, we can do what he did if we make the decision to accept this Christ Spirit within. First we have to know about it. Oh, okay, we know it's there. Now are we going to make a decision for Christ? What does that mean? It means that we're going to make a decision to accept this wonderful, powerful Spirit within us, this God Spirit, this I Am, this light within ourselves. Each one of us has to do that. Jesus was the one that showed us that there is a unity between God and humans, this oneness. And you and I have to discover that for ourselves too. And so it makes me think of this Gaelic poem, Ancient. Listen to this and see if you get what your real identity is. O Christ, thou Son of God, my own eternal self, do thou thy will in me. Be thou made flesh in me. Live thou thy life in me. I have no will but thine. I have no self but thee. O Christ, thou Son of God, my own eternal self. That is our true identity. Now, is that all we need to know? Is that it? No. Our fifth principle in unity says, it's not enough to know the truth. Now we have to live the truth we know. Now we have to start living this. And what did that really mean to you? You see, we say that live thou thy life through me or in me. Well, do we actually think that this life belongs to us? We can't even breathe ourselves. It is a power within that breathes us. This isn't our life. This is God's life. And what we're doing in this life is giving it back. That's why I love that poem so much. Okay, so let me give you an example then. Because I think that there is something called rebirth here. There is something that we need to do to really rebirth ourselves, to make ourselves new, to change. How are we ever going to recognize this Christ within and live from it if we don't change, if we don't transform? And what does the Bible say about transforming? You are transformed by the renewing of your mind. So here's my little example. It's about Nicodemus. Remember him? He was a Pharisee, a very learned man about religion. And he came to Jesus in the middle of the night because he didn't want anybody to know that he was going to see Jesus the Holy Man. Didn't want anybody to know that. And so he's asking Jesus questions. And Jesus says to him, "You must be born anew for you to see the kingdom of heaven." For you to enter into it. Did Nicodemus get it? No. Because you see, he was thinking from his intellect. That's what Pharisees did, wasn't it? I don't think a Pharisee ever got to their heart, to the heart of the matter. I don't think so. And so he's saying then, he asks the question, well, I mean, I'm old. Do I have to enter a second time into my mother's womb in order to be born again? Now here we say there are no dumb questions, but people, this is a dumb question. Really. And it's all because he didn't understand. And Jesus was shocked that this learned man did not understand the principles of rebirth. Well, let's not be too hard on Nicodemus, because I think that we might not understand the principles of rebirth either. There is a Nicodemus part in every one of us. You see, these principles of rebirth mean that you and I truly do have to change. We could say that there are other parts to this, maybe different ways of saying it. Maybe repent. What does repent mean? Turn yourself around, do a 180. And instead of being where you were, now you're going to turn around, you're going to see the light. That's rebirth. And so I'm not sure that we understand this because, you see, we're talking here about spiritual things. And our minds really aren't always set up that way. We love to think logically. And what is logical to the intellect makes no sense to the spiritual aspect of us. And we could say the reverse too. What makes perfect sense to the spiritual is not logical, it doesn't make any sense to the physical. So let me give you another example. Let's just say that I have $50 and I'm going to give it to a worthy cause. So I do that. I give my $50 to something that I believe in. And what does the intellect say? Well, now you're out $50. That wasn't too smart, because now you're minus that. You had it before, you don't have it now. But the spiritual aspect says, you have really done something great. Because what you have done is set a spiritual law into motion. The law of giving and receiving. You set that law into motion by first giving, then you receive. The intellect doesn't understand that. And so I think we don't understand it because it's as real as the law of gravity. Let me say that. Spiritual laws are as real as the law of gravity, but they're abstract. And because we don't see the immediate results like we would with gravity, I don't know if I believe that. And the only way that you will believe the law, the spiritual laws, is to enter into them, practice them, do them, live from them. Am I making any sense? It all started with this whole idea of knowing the difference between Jesus and Christ. The Christ that lives within us. But you see, part of our intellect and our heart, when we really understand this, we go from head living to heart living. One more example that I close with. Consider the lowly caterpillar and the magnificent butterfly. Consider those two. They live in completely different worlds. They are two completely different creatures, and yet they come from one entity. They are one entity. We could say that a caterpillar could fly because it has the potential. But in order for that caterpillar to fly, something has to happen. Some shift has to take place. A change has to take place. But let that change begin. So the little caterpillar looks up at this magnificent creature that's flying around and looking so beautiful and probably having this great time up there. And this little caterpillar says, well, you'll never get me up in one of those contraptions. And no, the little caterpillar isn't going to get up in one of those contraptions until it changes. But let the change begin, and a whole new set of principles emerge. And a whole new potential is released. Can you see yourself in this? You see, someone said once that a caterpillar, which we are sometimes, we are crawling around on this Persian rug. And we are seeing all the different aspects of life, all the different colors. And many times we feel lost. We don't even know where we're going. Isn't that true? Life is confusing. Well, let's be the butterfly. Let's raise our thinking and let's look down now at that Persian rug. Now we see a pattern. We see the pattern to life. We see the pattern to our lives. And now it makes sense. The mystic poet Rumi, he said, you are born with potential. You are born with ideals and dreams. You are born with greatness. You are born with wings. You are not meant for crawling, so don't. You have wings. Learn how to use them and fly. So we go back to our original idea here. The difference between Jesus and the Christ. You are that Christ also. What Jesus claimed for him, he claimed for you and for me. And so that is the decision we need to make in this life. To accept this power within us, the Christ within. We have wings, every one of us.